Today on the show, it's the first ever episode of Comic Book Q&A. So yesterday I had a very busy day preparing for some videos which aren't ready to be talked about yet, so I took to my Facebook and asked you guys if you had any questions regarding comics at all, and so many of you replied. I cannot get through every question in this video. That's really for my AMAs where I try and get through as many questions as possible. These are just really the questions that I thought were good or thought-provoking or really needed to be addressed. George Paccio asked, if you, as a writer, were forced to permanently kill off any Marvel character that you loved, such as Wiccan or Dazzler, etc., who would it be and why? Comic book characters all have the potential to come back and be used again. None of them should ever be permanently killed off, and I will tell you why. In our current age of comics, comic book characters are really avatars for us, really avatars for how we can better ourselves as people and what we see in our lives. By permanently killing off a comic book character, you're permanently killing off that aspect of your life, which is a huge deal and kind of disgusting to think about. So to answer your question, there is no answer to that. You should never even think about permanently killing off any characters because it's kind of a silly thing to think about. Margarita West asked, what do you think about DC and Marvel adding diversity to their comic books? I think that's called writing comics. Comics are supposed to evolve. They're supposed to be constantly changing. I mean, you try going back and reading stuff from the golden age of comics. It's not that easy. I don't want to be reading the same style of stuff in 10 years' time that I'm reading right now. That's boring. This is a very old art form that stayed with us for a very long time. I want it to be constantly changing and constantly keeping up with the times. And as such, it has to get more and more diverse, and it will never stop getting more and more diverse. But by diversity, if you meant what do I feel about representation of minorities in Marvel and DC, I think DC's doing a slightly better job, although they've had some fallouts with the recent re-emergence of Wally West, which just offended more people than I know made people happy. I can't really talk for racial minorities, but I can talk about LGBT culture. I will only say that LGBT culture has been properly represented when every aspect of the LGBT spectrum has been in a comic as a star, as a title character. Ilray Thorpe asked, for people that are new to comics, what comic do you think they should start out on first? I always say don't go and read back issues at first. Don't worry about the back issues. Start with what's going on at the moment. Try and find out what's newcomer friendly and is currently running. Comic book history is important to learn as a way of appreciating artistic history. However, it's not necessary to know comic book history to start reading comics. I always say the best way to start reading comics is to dive right in, but you do need to know which series is going to be kind of newcomer friendly. So from Marvel at the moment, I definitely think She-Hulk is the most newcomer friendly series at the moment. And then from DC, I would say Harley Quinn is very newcomer friendly, or the Justice League. Now the Justice League is good because it introduces you to a lot of characters all at once, and you can kind of get an idea of their personalities and kind of decide if you want to pick up their individual issues if they have one for yourself. Jesse Marquez asked, do you think we'll see an Image comic series like Saga go to the big screen, and do you think it would be good? I think Sex Criminals from Image would be very, very good as a TV show. It would have to be made by HBO, but it would be a great TV show either way. I think with hero comics, you can adapt them to the big screen very easily, but with comics like Sex Criminals, where it's not necessarily about heroes, they're better to adapt to TV shows, which is great. Luis Gabriel Vampilo Perez asked, is there an Uncle Sam in DC Comics? Yes, Uncle Sam is a character that first appeared in National Comics in 1940, I believe, and he was an entity that was created by the Founding Fathers of America. He wasn't used much past the golden age of comics, however he did come into use in '52. Comparison of villains in Arrow versus their comic counterparts. I don't watch Arrow. I really don't enjoy Arrow whatsoever. I don't find it very entertaining. It's very surface level entertainment. It really tells you how you should be feeling every step along the way. And I find that a lot with CW shows actually, which is why I'm very worried about iZombie. That's actually my problem with a lot of TV recently. It kind of tells me how I should be feeling rather than letting me decide how I should be feeling, which isn't okay with me, and it really puts me off a show. And Arrow, it does it all over, and I don't like it. I just stay away from the show. And also, this Flash costume is terrible. Flash is the one hero that you actually have to put into spandex. You have to put him in the thinnest and tightest fitting costume that you can find, and instead they give him leather. No one is going to be the fastest man alive in this leather getup. He's just going to be super chafed. He's not going to be a superhero. Samantha Stroud asked, who's your least favorite comic villain and why? Jinx. The thing with Jinx is, she's got a lot of potential, but it was never really utilized, and her character really didn't have any personality at all, which is why she had to be totally changed for the Teen Titans cartoon. I don't know, I just think she's a really boring villain. There's probably worse that I can think of, but that's just one that's on the top of my head. Jason Dickerson asked, if you were to rewrite a comic book series that has been discontinued, which one would you choose and how would I change it? I would never rewrite a comic book series from scratch. I would pick up where it left off, or I would do my own take on those characters, but I would never rewrite an entire series. I think that's very insulting to do. That being said, if I were to pick up a series where it left off, I would actually really like to write Lenore. Now, Lenore is not a Marvel or a DC comic. I'm not entirely sure who published it, but it was a series by one of my favorite artists, Roman Dirge. At heart, I'm a comedy writer. Lenore is a comedy character. Her series was great. I don't think I could improve upon what's already there, so I would just like to continue where it left off. Hendrix Chaplin asked, my top 5 comics / graphic novels. We don't really have time for the top 5 in this video, but I'll tell you my favorite one. It's Flex Mantello, Man of Muscle Mystery. I have reread that comic so many times, and I still discover new things. There was a point where I would reread it every single day, and I would discover new things every single time. There was so much in that comic that my History of Flex Mantello video, I think it just doesn't do it justice. There's so much there that I didn't get into. Though I find that to be true for a lot of Grant Morrison's works, especially the 90s Doom Patrol. There is so much going on in the 90s Doom Patrol, you wouldn't know where to begin when you're ripping it apart. Tony Thompson asked, what are your top 5 favourite events or story arcs? I don't really have time for my top 5 of each, but I'll tell you my favourite one of each. So my favourite one is probably the Young Avengers Search for Scarlet Witch. I really enjoyed that. I think I really enjoyed it because I relate to Wiccan so much. I think it ended in a great place. I don't feel like they could have done anything better. Now, my favourite event of all time is probably Crisis on Infinite Earths. Crisis on Infinite Earths was a huge game changer for comics as a whole. It was one of the biggest things to have ever been done in sequential storytelling. It really taught Marvel and DC to take a risk on their characters and really let loose and understand that they're in a world of superheroes. Anything can happen. So yeah, that's why Crisis on Infinite Earths is my favourite event of all time, and it really inspires me as a writer. It's super effective! Okay guys, that is it for today. If you have a question about comic books, please let me know in the comments down below. Your comment might be featured in the next episode of Comics Q&A. And also don't forget to like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, support the show by checking out my Patreon, and subscribe to my gaming channel. My name is Faust, this has been Exploring Comics, and it is super effective.